Hello everyone, welcome back to Unit 2, exploring two variable data. We are finishing up section 3.2 today. That's the one that's about least squares regression. And in this video, we are going to focus on determining the equation of a least squares regression line using technology or computer output and reviewing some pitfalls of linear regression. So there are a number of statistical software packages out there. We usually stick to the TI calculator. However, we sometimes use Staplet, right? And there are actually things you can pay for called Minitab, JMP. There's a lot of different ones. And the AP test, and therefore your textbook, and therefore me on tests, are going to ask you to interpret those computer outputs as well as you being able to use your own calculator to come up with some things. So you got to make sure that no matter what it is you're looking at, you can find the slope, you can find the y-intercept, and you can find the value of s and the value of r squared. S being the standard deviation of the residuals, not the standard deviation of your x's or y's. And so here you can see what it looks like when you look at Minitab results, all right? You'll see what they do in most software is they give you coefficients, and they tell you that you have a constant coefficient and a miles-driven coefficient. Now, the miles-driven coefficient is the coefficient that should go next to miles driven. That makes sense. That's going to be your slope. The constant coefficient doesn't really make sense because there is no coefficient. If it's a constant, it's telling you what the constant number is, and that is your y-intercept. Okay, I know that's annoying. I wish they would relabel it. They won't. This is the way that they look. Okay, S is your standard deviation of the residuals. When you see S equals, it means S. When you see R squared, it means R squared. There is also R squared adjusted. We don't use that. Don't look at it. You'll notice on this, there is no plane R, but you could find plane R because R squared is 0.664. R is the square root of 0.664. And so you could use this to come up with the equation that we've been working with for this entire video series. Now, less often, you might see JMP software outputs. They use Minitab a lot. We don't use JMP so much. But when you look at it, you can see R squared goes with R squared, right? So that makes sense. R squared adjusted, again, we don't use. The root mean square error. That's what JMP calls the standard deviation of the residuals. I know. I'm sorry. But that's what they call it. All right. And then from there, we also have our estimate here to go with the intercept and the miles driven. That's your two values that you need for your slope and your y-intercept. Okay, intercept goes with intercept. Miles driven is the thing that would multiply slope because miles driven is our x value, so that's the slope. Again, you just need to be able to look at these and say, yes, I can in fact build and interpret a model and come up with the r squared and the s value and interpret them and all of that jazz. Now, when we are given data, it is easiest to just use our calculators to find the equation of the least squares regression line. But if the data has been analyzed, we can actually also use some formulas. These formulas are on the AP Stats formula sheet. I know I haven't given that to you yet. That's because it hasn't been useful until now. But now we are getting to the point where we are going to have that AP Stats formula sheet all of the time. All right, and basically what it comes down to is that A, meaning our y-intercept, is equal to y bar minus b times x bar. Okay, y bar meaning the mean of your y values that you actually got from your data set, and x bar being the mean of the x values that you actually got from your data set. And then that b is the same as this b, and both of those can come from this formula, which is equal to r times sy over sx. That is r, your correlation coefficient, times the standard deviation of the y values that you actually got in your data set over the standard deviation of the x values that you actually got in your data set. Again, you don't need to memorize these formulas. They are on the formula sheet. What you do need to know is that y hat is equal to a plus bx. If you don't use that, it won't make any sense. So if you're told that when investigating the relationship between test scores and seating within a classroom, it was found that the mean and standard deviation of the row numbers are that x bar is 4.033 and s sub x, the standard deviation of the x's, is equal to 1.974. The mean and standard deviation of the test scores are that y bar is 81.2 and s sub y, the standard deviation of the y's, is 10.135. And the correlation between row number and test score is that R is equal to negative 0.218. You can actually come up with an equation for a least squares regression line that will predict test scores from row number. For 1, we know that we are talking about, we want to predict test scores. So we want to make sure we have test score hat equals something plus something times our row number, because we are using the row number to determine our prediction for test score. So we're going to start with B, the slope, because we know that B is equal to R times SY over SX. In this case, R is negative 0.218. SY is 10.135. And SX is 1.974. We type that into our calculator, we get negative 1.119, and so our slope is negative 1.119. Then when we go to calculate A, our y-intercept, we are going to use our formula of y bar minus b times x bar, where we know that y bar was 81.2, minus we're using b as negative 1.119, and x bar was 4.033. We type that into a calculator, and we get 85.713. So that means that our y-intercept is going to be 85.713. Now we were asked to interpret the slope. This is something that we already know how to do. Remember, it's really just rise over run. It's really just an Algebra 1 question. Here we know that as our row number increases, our test scores actually drop. So the predicted test score decreases by 1.119 points for each additional row you move back through a classroom. Notice I said predicted test score, not actual test score, and I made sure that I talked about points, right? I need to be talking in units. Next, we have to interpret our R value. Remember, R talks about the strength and the direction of our association. So when I look at R, I know it's negative. That means that there is a general downward trend. And it's 0.218. That's a pretty low R value. So I'm going to say that this is weak. So I would say that since R is equal to negative 0.218, there's a weak negative association between row number and test score with this model. How accurate will our predictions be? I would assume that these predictions would be not particularly accurate as we have such a low R value. All right, so some things to keep in mind when you're working with correlation and with regression. One thing that's a very big deal is choosing the proper explanatory versus response variable. You want to make sure that whatever ends up on your x-axis is the thing that you're trying to say influences the thing on the y-axis. That matters, okay? It matters to readers. It matters to how we interpret a graph. It's a big deal, all right? Also important is knowing this distinction between a predicted value and an actual value, right? There's a difference between y hat and actual y. That's a really big deal as well. Another important thing is that correlation and regression lines describe only linear relationships. So we could use that on graph A, we could use that on graph C, but we would not use correlation and regression if we were talking about graph B or graph D. Looking at all of these graphs, you can see we have the same R value going with the same line equation, and yet these are vastly different graphs, right? Like I say, A and C are both linear relationships, even though, yes, this point being so far off that perfect line is really affecting the R value. But for B and D, you would not fit a line to that data. And if you do, your calculator will give you a line and it will tell you that it's a reasonable fit. It's not. You have to look at the data and make the decision to use regression. Another important thing to keep in mind is that correlation and least squares regression are not resistant to outliers. So here we have a data set, all right? And within this data set, we have a bunch of different things going on. Here we have two different children with the same age. Here we have child 19, who we're going to talk about a lot, and child 18. So with all of the data points in, we have a regression line that is this green line right here. That green line is this equation, okay? It has an R of negative 0.64. It's lovely, it's wonderful, it fits all of our data. But when you look at child 19, you're like, wow, that child is coming up with a really high adaptive score. Maybe that's weird, right? Maybe we want to take that out for some reason. And so without child 19, then we're looking at this red line. You can see without child 19, we have an effect. Our line has changed and our slope has changed. Without child 19, our y-intercept stayed the same-ish. It does not have to. But our slope has definitely changed, right? This slope is a little bit larger of an absolute value than this one is. That means our line is a little bit slantier than this one is. Now, without child 18, that's where we get this blue line. That is a very different line, all right? And it has a very different R value and very different coordinates, right? Now, the thing is, for each point, you are going to get different y-intercepts. We aren't really concerned with those. It's the different slope and the different R values that are the most important. Correlation and your regression lines are not going to be resistant to these kind of oddball things that are outside of the normal situation. Here you can see the difference between an outlier, like we have on the left, and an influential point like we have on the right. That influential point also happens to have high leverage, but not all do. Okay, you can see here on the left, we have our line. All of our data pretty much fits on one line, and that line would probably, without your outlier, have been somewhere much more like there, right? But it's been pulled upwards by this outlier that is very vertically distant and has a huge residual. See how almost all of the points are under the line except for that one point, because that's pulling the whole line upwards, trying to account for how big its residual is. Versus on the right, we have this influential point. If I were going to draw a line through that data, I would be drawing basically a vertical line, except that influential point has pulled us downwards, right, and outwards. It has totally changed the way we have to look at our graph, because all of a sudden there's this hugely, vastly different point all the way over there. That's an influential point. Now going back to our example, if we're looking at the situation, the point for child 18 has high leverage because it's so far away. There's such a big horizontal gap between most of our data and child 18. That makes it a high leverage point. Just because it's horizontally distant, that means that it is going to have an impact on that line in a way that sometimes is not obvious. When we look at both the regression and the residual data, both of those seem fine. But when we remove child 18 from our situation, we can see that line changes considerably. And without child 18, that's our analysis. And our R value has gone down from being 0.64 to 0.33. At 0.64, I was thinking, okay, this is a moderately strong relationship, but at 0.33, this is now a weak relationship. I don't know that I want to use this analysis at all, right? And so that's what you need to be on the lookout when you look out for high leverage, is that it's physically far away. And so even though you might look at this original graph and think, oh, my data's fine, without that point, your data changes considerably. And that's a big deal, all right? At the same time, when we talk about child 19, which is this child here, that child is vertically very far from our original line, right? It is the highest residual. You can tell when you look on that residual plot, you're like, oh, wow, pretty much all of our data seems to be over here. Vertically, child 19 is a problem. Horizontally, 18 is a problem. Vertically, 19 is a problem. And so that is considered to be an outlier because outliers are vertically different. Okay, and without child 19, we can see our data does change as well because, again, this is not resistant to those outliers, the high leverage points, the influential points. And the most important thing to remember about correlation is that correlation is not the same as causation. Just because there's a correlation between two variables does not mean that one actually causes the other. There may be a strong association between two variables, but that is not enough to draw conclusions about cause and effect. You cannot say one thing causes another in AP statistics almost at all. This is a very serious problem that we come into when we talk about any social science, particularly because it's heavily reliant upon statistics. We can't be sure what causes what thing. We can say these things are very closely linked. They are very closely associated. They are very closely correlated. Okay, they definitely go together, but that doesn't mean that one causes the other. It's very hard to establish a causal relationship. It can be done, but you need to really carefully design your experiments. And so we have now reached the end of lesson 3.2. And so now I hope that you can determine the equation of a least squares regression line using technology or computer output. You can go through and use those formulas, and that you understand the pitfalls of linear regression, and particularly that correlation is not the same as causation. Do not ever tell me that one thing causes another. We have also reached the end of section 3.2, so I hope that at this point you feel like you can do all of the things in this section and that you feel like you're going to be ready for our next assessment. Have a great day, and I will see you in our next class.